Ladies and gentlemen, Diddy has 66 civil lawsuits filed by Tony Buzbee alone. The question is, how many of those people or alleged victims really exist? Let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like those cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, StraightGameTV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, once again, hit the thumbs up button. Also, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to get right into it. So we know from a few months back that Tony Buzbee made a press conference and alleged hundreds of victims, maybe 1,000, and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. We also know that there was a lawsuit that was filed by Tony Buzbee alleging that some young lady was assaulted by Jay-Z and Diddy that was soon thereafter dropped. There was no evidence. As a matter of fact, it was a complete lie. Point blank period, it was a complete lie. It was a completely fabricated lawsuit based on the evidence that I saw, that the research that I had did about the pictures. Diddy was with J-Lo that night, people who were at the party that they were at, and various other pieces of proof that proved that what the young lady saying or what the lawyer alleged to had happened didn't happen. Also, the young lady had spoke out and said that her lawyer, her legal team they put pressure on her. That's what she had said, and that's what Jay-Z's attorneys had said when they talked to her, if you will. But the most serious part about this is we seen in the criminal trial with Sean P. Diddy Combs what Diddy likes, right? Diddy is what you would consider somebody who likes to watch his woman be with another man, if you will. If you look at the Art of Dialogue over there, he has Clayton Howard. The interview is doing great numbers. And more importantly, Clayton Howard is giving the most detailed information that I've heard thus far from any of the male escorts or sex workers, if you will, that were involved with Diddy. So now, when Tony Buzbee brings these lawsuits alleging that various people were drugged and all of these other things, to me, the reason why it doesn't ring as true as Cassie and Jane and their situation, they were girlfriends. And that's the thing that, like I said, a lot of people didn't understand. I don't even think that Tony Buzbee understood that at the time. Once again, what the real truth was behind all of what was going on. We seen for a fact that Diddy's situation was a, London hotel, the Beverly Hills Hotel, Jane's place. It was a threesome, basically, or dealing with other male sex workers. To me, if anything that comes about, and like I said, this is based on the information that we've seen from the trial, if anything comes about somebody saying they got drugged, they was unconscious and all of these other things, it simply doesn't ride for me with the Diddy situation, because the world basically got a front row seat as to what he liked from young ladies, Cassie Ventura and Daphne Joy, aka Jane, from what they really like and what he really liked and what was his thing. So much so that Jane, she basically said that, remember, she testified that she threatened Diddy that if he didn't come back off of vacation with Young Miami, she wasn't going to give him the Valentine's Day present of being with two men that he wanted, and he did come back off of that. That's the thing that, to me, that floated Diddy's boat, right? So these lawsuits, 60 lawsuits, and like I said, once again, you have Clayton Howard, who has his own lawsuit against Diddy and Cassie. Once again, this is someone who was in proximity, who was there, who was mentioned at Diddy's trial, who he says that video was shown in regards to there being a freak off and him being involved. Like I said, you got to check out his interview over there on the Art of Dialogue, and you can see what I'm actually saying. If it's something that really doesn't involve that in regards to Tony Buzbee lawsuit, like I said, I'm questioning if these people, these Jane and John Does, really exist, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, once again, you have a right to confront your accuser, and I think that any civil lawyer, civil judge in civil court, I think that should be something that should be made to happen, if you will. Anybody who's suing anybody, from now, you just can't hide behind this Jane John Doe thing. This is crazy, if you will. So, but like I said, your boy Delray, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, StraightGameTV, and today we're gonna confront the cold realities surrounding the Sean P. Diddy Combs 66 civil lawsuits and what lies ahead for his alleged victims and their credibility, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, Diddy behind bars now, as we very well know, convicted on 2 counts of the Mann Act, right? For transporting individuals for prostitution, drug-fueled freak-offs. But even after acquittal on the heavy racketeering charges, the Houston-based attorney, Tony Buzbee, continues to file civil lawsuits, ladies and gentlemen. 60, I'm sorry, not 66, I stand corrected, 60 lawsuits and counting, arguing his client suffered abuse at the hands of Combs and his inner circle, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the question we have to ask. Do all of these alleged victims even exist? You got to really ask that question. Do all of these alleged victims even exist? And if they do, what power do they still hold now that Combs is convicted? But not on the most serious charges, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we heard the evidence. We heard the testimony. We kind of got a basic picture of what Diddy's thing is and what he liked. Like I said, I thought it shouldn't have been divulged to the world. I thought they should have focused on what the alleged crimes were. Like, yeah, we did a freak off here. Yeah, we did, all of those other things. But it was what it was. The people who were privy to that, you heard what it was. We also are going to dive deep into the admission from Combs' defense team acknowledging drug use, domestic violence, and kinky but consensual group sex, and explore how those admissions can strengthen civil cases, yet consent defenses, right? Yet weaken consent defenses, right? So now, once again, Tony Buzbee has filed all of these lawsuits, right? And like I said, a lot of these people, we don't even know their names. It was one young lady who came out. The judge actually said in one of Tony Buzbee lawsuits that she had a certain period of time to mention her name. And she didn't, ladies and gentlemen. That lawsuit was also dropped. You get it? So when I asked the question, and I posed the question, do all of these alleged victims even exist? Jane Doe, when Tony Buzbee's feet was held to the fire by the Southern District of New York in regards to the Jane Doe, in which Diddy, his legal team, basically won the motion, basically where the Jane Doe had to reveal her identity. Ladies and gentlemen, that lawsuit was dismissed, and it was never filed again, ladies and gentlemen. So that's the reason why I asked that question. It is very important, right? So like I said, when we dive into this, let's break it down, man. What is Tony Buzbee actually fighting for? Like I said, we know about the 2 lawsuits, the one involving Diddy and Jay-Z's that were dropped. The second of the Jane Doe who refused to come out and mention, reveal her identity, even if she even existed, if you will, right? We don't know. And like I said before, if you want to get paid like Cassie, you have to reveal yourself. If you want to get paid like Cassie, you have to reveal yourself. If you want to get paid potentially like Clayton Howard, you have to reveal yourself. These people are, minus the embarrassment, basically stating it is what it is. And they were actually in Diddy. So all of these people pretending to be scared and all of these other things, like I said, people have a right to feel the way that they feel, but I'm kind of leery of what these lawsuits are. And like I said, it's kind of suspicious to me. Basically, so Tony Buzbee is moving forward. Over 60 civil lawsuits have been filed by alleged victims. They make claims including domestic violence and coercion, drugging and exploitation, marathon freak-off sex parties, film for posterity. Now listen to this. We know for a fact there were no real marathon freak-off parties involving more than the people that were actually involved, in which we heard about in court that Cassie testified to. It was not that type of deal. So when some of these alleged lawsuits are filed by Tony Buzbee, these lawsuits here, if they're marathon freak-off sex parties filmed for posterity or whatever have you, right? I don't know who he has. Like I said, once again, I'm going back to Clayton Howard. I'm going back to the Punisher. I'm going back to Daniel Phillips. These are people who spoke out, who were actually in proximity, got paid by Cassie and Diddy dealing with the freak-offs. You can't come as a Jane or John Doe now. They basically released the photos of a lot of the escort workers in court, ladies and gentlemen, right? Cassie basically walked them through that. Cassie walked the prosecution through damn near every one of the male escorts that they used, right? So you got to understand that. But Busby says he's filing additional suits in California and Nevada, asserting that the criminal trial's evidentiary record actually strengthens these civil cases, even if the most serious criminal charges didn't stick, right? I beg to differ. I don't think so. Somebody making an allegation is not proof of anything. He's, I think Tony Buzbee's trying to do the OJ effect. OJ got found not guilty in the murder, but in civil court, he got found liable. I think he's hoping for a long shot in dealing with Diddy based on, and trying to capitalize off of some of the allegations that were made. Like I said, I go back to the Diddy and Jay-Z lawsuit that was dismissed. It was totally 100% a lie. Point blank, period. You don't hear nobody talking about that no more. They're not talking about the fact that the young lady who was made to reveal herself by a Southern District of New York judge did not do so. She was represented by Tony Buzbee, ladies and gentlemen. Point blank, period. Like I said, I don't think she existed. And if she did exist, I don't think that she was ever in proximity to Diddy. And the reason why I say that, we seen and we heard how it goes down. I recommend that you go over there and you watch the Art of Dialogue's interview with Clayton Howard. He's giving you the most insightful interview or conversation around that Diddy situation that I've heard thus far. Candid, point blank, honest, period, in depth. It's just, I was like, wow, oh wow, And like I said, he's accepted accountability for his role that he played in it, which a lot of people don't do. They run from the accountability aspect of it, ladies and gentlemen. So like I said, my question is, do a lot of these people even exist? It's easy to file a lawsuit and put a Jane Doe on it, and hopes that you'll get a settlement, right? The defense admissions and civil implications, if you will, that may arise or may not arise, right? During the trial, Combs' team conceded to certain facts, acknowledged drug use, admitted violent behavior towards Cassie and Jane, as well as, let me point this out, as well as Jane being violent to Diddy, first being the provocateur of one of the situations, or the only situation that involved violence in dealing with Jane, aka Daphne Joy, ladies and gentlemen. So now, right? I don't think Cassie, or I wouldn't say Daphne, I wouldn't say Daphne, but I don't think Cassie really thought long and hard about when they filed the lawsuit. I think they were just thinking about money from that perspective. But it is what it is. It works how it works, right? So now, you got to understand this. During the trial, Diddy's team conceded to acknowledge the drug use, admitted violent behavior towards Cassie and Jane. I said the group sex was kinky but consensual, confirmed that Combs watched his girlfriends with other men, right? Now, that right there was the crux of what was going on involving Diddy, along with them traveling from Miami to California, Turks and Caicos, and wherever else they were doing, and they were holding these freak-offs, right? These admissions hurt his criminal defense, but for civil court, they offer plaintiffs powerful leverage, if you will, in some ways, right? Tony Buzbee went on to explain in an interview that these details support claims of serial abusing behavior, coercion, and manipulation, even without trafficking and conspiracy charges. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody can say that, can file a lawsuit at this particular time in regards to Diddy and make any kind of accusation about what came out in this, and basically do what the government did with Cassie's civil case, turn it into a criminal case, or take Cassie's civil case and copy it and add John and Jane Doe's to that, alleging similar or somewhat other allegations in reference to what Cassie was talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to try to differentiate the difference between Cassie and what anybody else is saying, Jane and what those were Diddy's girlfriends, right? So if the person who's making these accusations did not have a personal relationship with Diddy from that perspective, I'm side-eyeing any kind of allegations or any. I'm just side-eyeing. I'm like, hold on, man. We just heard what he liked. You know what I mean? So not that anything else couldn't happen, but like I said, you cannot be a Jane or John Doe and come try to get money out of this situation when you got people like Clayton Howard and other people who might be coming forward. Breonna Bongdalen, Mia, she was talking to a lawyer. Breonna suing Diddy for $10 million for allegedly holding her off the balcony, which was basically disproved in the criminal trial. Like I said, once again. So with that being said, we're going to see basically what happens, right? Listen, like I said, once again, do all these alleged victims exist, right? You got to understand, right? Here's where it gets complex, right? Many of the plaintiff names in Busby's civil suits remain anonymous or redacted, ladies and gentlemen. That raises uncomfortable questions. Very uncomfortable questions, ladies and gentlemen. Do all of these victims even exist? Will they actually step forward in court? Or is parody and ambiguity being used to shield them and their stories? I'm going to say it once again, ladies and gentlemen. Do all of these victims even exist? Will they actually step forward in court? Or is parody and ambiguity being used to shield them and their stories? I need you to understand this, because this is not far-fetched. After the Jay-Z Diddy lawsuit, oh man, I was like, wow. But I kind of knew that it was shaky to begin with, because the young lady was also trying to remain a John Doe, and the pressure that Jay-Z's legal team put on Tony Buzbee she went and did an interview with ABC. And like I said, once again, she had alleged that people was at this party, that a party that they didn't have. The group that she said was there was actually on tour somewhere else. All of the inconsistencies that didn't line up with what the lawsuit said, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, it was dropped. Jay-Z is now suing Tony Buzbee and the young lady for defamation. You understand what I'm saying? This is why it needs to, the question needs to be asked. Listen, Teeny Garagos, speaking for Sean P. Diddy Combs, claimed he has not sexually assaulted or abused anyone. And Tony Buzbee responded bluntly, listen, ladies and gentlemen, Teeny Garagos once again said, you got to understand, Diddy has not sexually assaulted or abused anyone. Diddy wasn't found guilty for sexual assault, ladies and gentlemen. Diddy wasn't found guilty for rape. Diddy wasn't found guilty for none of those other charges other than transportation across state lines for prostitution. The Mann Act. So I don't see how Tony Buzbee thinks that somehow because something was alleged in a criminal case that was not proven somehow benefits the argument that he's making with a bunch of John and Jane Does, right? And like I said, it raises, uncomfortable questions. Do these victims or alleged victims really exist? And Teeny Garagos has already spoke up. Speaking for Sean Combs, claimed that he has not sexually assaulted or abused anyone. And Tony Buzbee shot back, basically said half of these plaintiffs' names have not even been revealed. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, because Tony Buzbee is actually revealing that, guess what? They haven't even been revealed. And the reason why Teeny Garagos can speak so eloquently and articulately and factually about what Diddy has and has not done is she just represented him in one of the biggest trials in hip hop history. And from most expert standards, she was successful in beating the government against a racketeering and coercion, fraud, witness tampering, and a whole host of other predicate felonies, right? That's the reason why she can say that. And Diddy had to come clean with his legal team. He had to come clean. You best believe he had to come clean. And like I said, we understand what he likes and how he likes it. So once again, when Tony Buzbee says half of these plaintiffs' names have not been revealed, so how can you flatly deny this after seeing testimony of clear violence and videos of him dragging someone back into a room? Ladies and gentlemen, boom. That lets you know right there that Tony Buzbee really doesn't have any kind of evidence against Diddy. He has no kind of evidence. Tony Buzbee is referring to Cassie's videotape at the Intercontinental Hotel. You got to understand that. It's put up, and like I said, the fact that he said, well, you don't even know the names of them. So how could you say that he did? That's basically what he's saying. He said, you don't even know the names of some of these plaintiffs. So how can you flatly deny this after seeing testimony? Right. So what he's hoping to do is to get some jury to believe that somehow, some way, look at that tape. This is what my client is arguing. And if you don't believe my client that he's a danger, and once again, it's spook. Look at this tape. That tape did not work in the criminal case. It was domestic violence between a boyfriend and girlfriend. Right? Not against some random person who wants to file a lawsuit under Jane or John Doe and talk about how they want $20 million. There's a difference. You have to make it make sense, right? Listen, the ambiguity around identities may intimidate some people, right? Listen, I'm telling you, because this is what it's made to do. Listen, the ambiguity around the identities of some of these people may intimidate some victims. But Busby says he still plans to bring them before a jury. Think about it. He doesn't care. He doesn't care because it doesn't hurt him. Right? Like I said, once again, now check this out. The ambiguity around the identities may intimidate some victims. Right? No. Like I said, once again, it's either you got to reveal yourself. You can't. The judge, I'm telling you, these SDNY judges, after that situation, after the criminal case and dealing with Diddy, them judges gonna make people start revealing themselves. You can't just come and hide behind, Jane and John Doe's, ladies and gentlemen. You're gonna have to come testify as to what it was and what happened and so on and so forth. It's just not gonna be where if you got a suit and he's suing and my client doesn't want to testify. She's intimidated. She's scared. No, he's scared. No, that's not gonna work. I had to come better than that. Watch a lot of these lawsuits start to just disappear. Watch. Under the guise that, the victims simply don't want to come forward. I told y'all that about the situation with the Jay-Z lawsuit. And look what happened. It happened. I could see right through it. I was like, oh, wow. And they done picked the picture up on the internet and tried to put a story behind it. Not knowing that there were other people there, photographers and so on and so forth, and a host of other things that were so wrong in the lawsuit that it wasn't even funny. Like I said, the jury's verdict and what it means or doesn't, ladies and gentlemen. When the jury declared Diddy innocent on the racketeering and trafficking, but convicted him on 2 counts of transportation to prostitution. Why? Tony Buzbee says this. This is what he said. Tony Buzbee said the government only presented 2 alleged victims. See, now once again, I'm gonna give you. You gotta really see through this. Tony Buzbee said the government only presented 2 victims, but with personal histories with Combs, right? Thus making consent a gray zone. According to him, we know for a fact Diddy was involved with Jane. Diddy was involved with Cassie. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, there's no gray zone. This is rhetoric being spewed as rhetoric is spewed in like I said, even with the Jay-Z Diddy, it was a whole bunch of bolstering and all of that, only to get the lawsuit dismissed voluntarily, not by a court. Tony Buzbee withdrew from the lawsuit and dropped the lawsuit, ladies and gentlemen, against Diddy and Jay-Z, right? So when he says, the government only presented 2 victims in Diddy's criminal case, but with personal histories with Combs, thus making consent a gray zone. What? The jury struggled to understand consent under duress, right? This is his version of what he thinks happened versus the real life version of the verdict that the jury came back with. Not guilty on the serious charges, guilty on the other ones, right? Now, listen. This is Tony Buzbee's argument. Still, for civil plaintiffs, consent mechanics differ, and that's what he's relying on. He's relying on this, slick, sly, slippery slope of all of these slithering and sleuthing slanderous ways of doing things from that perspective in the media, like he did with Jay-Z and Diddy. It didn't work. Jay-Z was like, if you think I did something, file criminal charges. Jay-Z never met this young lady that Tony Buzbee represented. He never met this girl. She was 12, 13 years old. What? And people should be appalled by that. You should be appalled by that. Like, dude, you should be up in arms, about that. Like, what? Somebody could say something like that and then come and sit down and actually do an interview with a straight face? Like, really? I don't believe no lawsuit that Tony Buzbee's going to move forward from here. Plain and simple, right? Listen, he says, they don't have to be beat beyond reasonable doubt. This is what he's hoping for. They only the lower standard of more likely than not. And that's what he's hoping on. He's hoping of more likely than not. Like I said, but I believe that Diddy's gonna fight it all. And it's gonna come to, one has to come to court and testify. Right? Plain and simple. And you gotta have your story together now. Because we've seen with Mr. Steele and Westmoreland and Teeny Garagos do to people who like to get up on the stand and tell lies. And then not only that, when you lose the civil lawsuit, now the alleged victim has to pay Diddy's legal fees. Ooh-wee. That's going to be scary, right? Right? That means while the criminal outcome denied his worst charges, Tony Buzbee said, plaintiffs in civil court may still prevail. That's the hope, ladies and gentlemen. But it's not going to be that easy. Trust me. Trust me. So like I said, once again, when you talk about the bail and the sentencing and intimidation, after the verdict, Combs requested bail, offered $1 million bond, passport surrender, drug testing. The judge denied it. Listen, this is what Tony Buzbee believes. Tony Buzbee believes that had Combs been released, once again, speculation. Nobody knows. Speculation for the sake of speculation. You got to ask Tony Buzbee, what happened to the lawsuit with Diddy and Jay-Z, right? And how is the situation different from what he filed against them, and why did he drop it? Why did he drop that lawsuit? Simple, plain and simple. That's the question. Why did he drop the lawsuit? The lawsuit was fake. It was phony. It was a lie. Point blank, period. Like I said, I seen the pictures. I knew, and I know some people that one of the photographers that was at the party that took pictures. The young lady that they were alleging at some party that was there and all of this wasn't there. Another thing that was easy to tell, and Jane Doe had spoke on this, they weren't using limos back then. They didn't use limos. The young lady said a limo. They didn't use limos. They were using SUVs back then. The same kind of SUV that Biggie got killed in. The Suburbans, if you will. Or the Cadillac Escalades, if you will. So, once again, that was another thing that was easily to be able to see through when you understand that. So, Tony Buzbee said, Busby believes that Combs, had he been released, many plaintiffs would have been too afraid to continue, right? The threat of intimidation, real or perceived, can halt civil claims. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, people can perceive whatever the hell they want to. It's not real. You could be scared of the boogeyman and say, I don't want to go home and sleep in my bed alone. That doesn't make it real. And that don't mean the boogeyman gonna do nothing to you. As a matter of fact, the boogeyman don't even exist. You see what I'm saying? So this is the argument that Tony Buzbee is trying to come with. Can halt civil claims, and it's not even about that. That wasn't he's basically trying to make it as if the situation involving Diddy being denied bail had something to do with the civil claims that he filed. It simply didn't. The judge basically stated why he denied the bail. It had nothing to do with that, right? It had something to do with the domestic violence situation, point blank, right? Tony Buzbee said he insists he wants Combs to remain incarcerated until sentencing. That raises broader concerns about protecting victims, ensuring accountability, not allowing power to silence survivors. Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen, we don't even know if any of the people that Tony Buzbee claims to represent is even real. Like I said, we're going based on the fact that the case against Diddy and Jay-Z was a lie. Based on Jay-Z's attorney, based on Jay-Z, like I said, yeah, it was a lie. It was all fabricated. And therefore, it no longer exists, ladies and gentlemen. It was a farce, according to Jay-Z's attorney, right? So you have to understand that. And that's the reason why I'm doing this video. 60 lawsuits. And you only got the only people that have really filed lawsuits against Diddy, if any, were people who were in the immediate vicinity, escorts, Breonna Bondurant, Mia, all of these people had some kind of relationship that were in the inner circle of Diddy, right? Okay, cool. And if they get their day in court, then they get their day in court. But at the end of the day, 60 lawsuits coming from where? From who? People calling the hotline. Yeah, like I said, we don't know. But I'm looking at the past experience in dealing with a Tony Buzbee, if you will, and who has not prevailed in any lawsuit that he's filed against Diddy as of yet, right? So, so the question is, do these alleged victims hold any kind of power, right? For now, key fact, civil court is still wide open. Verdicts didn't close that door, right? The verdict against Diddy in his criminal case did not close the door to any kind of civil litigation or civil lawsuit. Victims hold power, kind of, if you will, via civil lawsuits with lower proof of standards, right? So the proof of standards is a little bit lower, if you want to, count that in. Access to deposition testimony and previously sealed evidence, right? They can subpoena that evidence and try to bring that into the civil case as it relates to, or how that relates to anybody as a plaintiff that Tony Buzbee is representing. I don't really see how that will work. Like I said, once again, and access to documentation revealed during the criminal trial. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, I still don't see how that benefits anybody that Tony Buzbee is representing. Once again, you have to put them in the proximity of Diddy, and you can't pick some party, or some kind of event and be like, oh, this person was at this event at this particular time, so on and so forth. That's not going to work. That's simply not going to work. And that's basically what's being done. I seen the MO. The MO is that. The MO is simply, pick a time and place that we know Diddy was at in the last 20 some odd years, and we can create a lawsuit around that, right? We can create a John Doe, Jane Doe lawsuit around a situation where, whether it was at Howard University, at that, celebrity basketball game where the people died, whether it was, a Grammy party, whether it was a Diddy party, whether it was a party in the Hamptons, and all of these other, and you can try to create a lawsuit around any of those events, and somebody saying that they was there and that Diddy did something to them, just like the lawsuit with Jay-Z and Diddy was. It was created based on pictures. It wasn't created based on any kind of facts, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you really need to understand and pay attention to. I said that before the Diddy, his actual criminal trial. This is not about defending Diddy. This is about justice. This is about somebody being able to come up with a story based on pictures or based on certain incidents and situations, if you will, right? And you're going to see it. You're going to hear it. Like I said, most of these lawsuits, you're going to be like, you're going to see, oh, it was this time and we was at this party that Diddy had. It's going to be specific parties and things like that. And we know for a fact now, based on what the test, that none of this situation for Diddy ever happened at no parties and nothing like that. He had, listen to me, ladies and gentlemen, and how you know that is, he had a mask on when he first started to do the free call so that the escort wouldn't know who he was. So now he just out at the party doing, nah. Once again, think about it. He was hiding in a hotel room from the escort, somebody he was doing a threesome with. But now he's out in public just engaging in, sexual assault with people at parties and white parties and, MTV video musical award parties. Come on, y'all. We got to use our brain here, ladies and gentlemen, right? Look, listen, the power that some of these alleged, I'm going to call them alleged, ladies and gentlemen, alleged victims have is conditional though, right? Right? I gave you the civil suits with the lower proof of standards, some of the stuff that may appear to be in favor of civil litigants, access to a deposition testimony and previously sealed evidence, access to documentation revealing revealed during the criminal trial. But a lot of that information is also, the power of that information is conditional. And the reason why I say that, because guess what? They must come forward. So it could be John, Jane Doe, but they must come forward. And I guarantee you, 95% of these people, if not 100% of them, have never met Diddy or been in his presence like that. And if they did, it wasn't anything from that perspective. Like I said, it's easy to make an allegation. It's hard to prove a case. And we just seen that in one of the biggest hip hop cases or trials in hip hop or music history, if you will. Right? Also, they got number one, they got to come forward. Number two, they have to provide testimony, like Cassie and Jane, right? And number three, let their identity be challenged or revealed. So you got to, Tony Buzbee has to cross that threshold too. Like I said, with the first lawsuit of the young lady that they challenged, and the judge told Tony Buzbee that she had to reveal her identity. She could not do. If she even existed, we'll never know. But the lawsuit was not filed again, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely, positively not. So be wary about what we're hearing from all of what we've heard from that perspective. Like I said, once again, and you got to understand something. That's a lot to ask. That's a lot to ask, right? That's a lot to ask when you talk about the bigger picture, right? And not everyone will go public. Not everyone will go public. Bottom line. So we're going to see what happens with these 60 or so lawsuits. I apologize. In the earlier I had said 66, but 60 or so lawsuits, right? Diddy might be convicted, of those two charges with the Mann Act, right? But only the lesser accounts. You know what I mean? Like I said, those are the lesser accounts. His victims, many are still fighting. But not all may ever step into the light, right? This isn't the end of the story, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't the end of the story. It's a complex, it's murky, it's messy. Accountability is a thing, victim courage, public skepticism, and legal strategy, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, once again, both criminal and civil systems are in play. And like I said, we got October 3rd coming up for the sentencing, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to see what happens with that. Like I said, more importantly, your boy Delray, straight game.
Life is like playing cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.